זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע.
What a great day to jump in, and we have a double portion, so double, double for your trouble, right? Let's hop in. We are in Tazria and Metzora, the two portions, and it's going to be Leviticus 12. We're going to run through 15:33, and I'll give you a couple. The Haftarah or the prophets is Isaiah 66, 1 through 24. And if you're following along with us, we're in Mark 9, 40 through 50. And I just want to do a quick warning. I'm going to do a warning. I might jump in a couple other times. If you're watching right now and you have littles around you, you might want to put headphones on. I'm not sure. I'm going to be very sensitive to that. But we are talking about things like some intimate marital relational things, bodily fluids. And so if you do have littles in the room, children, again, I'm going to be very sensitive to that. But I do want to let you know that it might not be appropriate for little ears, everything we say. And I'll let you, as the parent or guardian or whatever, I'll let you be the judge of that with them. But I just wanted to let you know that ahead of time, give you a little warning on that. And if you're watching live, I would love to hear from you. I turned my comments on so I can actually watch. If you're watching from Facebook, for example, I can actually see you as you're doing your comments. So I would love to have you interact. If you have questions or something you want clarification on, please feel free to hop it in the comments. Otherwise, if you're watching on YouTube or in any other way, please use the comments. I want to hear from you. It's really that important. At least I don't feel like I'm just talking to the green light on my computer, right? I'm not just talking to this green light right here. I want to feel like I'm talking to you. So I love hearing back from you. So last week, hey Misty, last week we kind of didn't get all the way to chapter 11. And one of the things I like about chapter 11, I'm going to do a real quick rehash on that, is going back last week, chapter 11, I wrote really big across my chapter 11, red letter edition. Because, you have a lot of your translations, when you get into the Brit Hadashah or the renewed or new, it's called the New Testament, you'll see red letter edition. And what that means is anything Yeshua said, Jesus said, it's in red letters. Well, I want to tell you this. I think I want to go through my Bible anywhere where it says, and Adonai said, that's red letter, right? I think it's important. It's red letter. This is what he said. Tell the people this. And that whole section about dietary laws, about things that are, how are we set apart? How do we look different? This is something that a lot of us struggle with, is our dietary laws. I am unapologetic in this. And so I already know your emails. And can I just say, I have walked a very strong, we'll say, Christian life since I was born. I was born into the church, raised in the church. I know what the New Testament says. I know what Peter's dream says. I know what the arguments are. But for me, and for those that walk this out with me, it has been a very personal revelation. And I just want to present to you a concept that I want you to think about. A lot of the struggle, why are you caring if you can have a pork chop or not, or if you can have pepperoni or not? Like, why are we holding on to these dietary things like, don't take away the bacon, right? It seems when you're on the other side of this, you'll laugh at yourself. And I say when, because I know eventually the Holy One, when he is working, you're becoming holy. Be holy, for I'm holy. That word be holy is actually like a becoming holy. Becoming set apart, not holy, but like become set apart, become like a person who looks different than everybody else. Guess what? One of the things that makes you look different is what you eat. And if you're like, well, that's the old thing, we don't have to abide by that anymore. Again, I want to tell you, I know, I've been you. So I want to just give you a moment to just ask you to think about being me, because I've been you, and I know what you think and what you believe, because I've been you. But could you just take a minute and come on my side come over to the dark side. No, come over to the light, the bright side, because the brightness. I'm going to share something with you that it's not heavy. The yoke isn't too much. But I want to just say this to you. Think about all the parables. Think about even Joseph, his dream about the cows and the grain. Was it really about cows and grain? No. Was it really about them bowing? No, it was about people. When they talked about, oh, the wheat bowed down to the other wheat, was that about really that wasn't it wasn't literal. It was talking about people bowing to people, right? The cows eating up the other cows was talking about years. We're talking about people. So I want to, we talk about the meaning of trees. A lot of you, oh, I'm like a tree planted. He'll be like a tree planted by the water. Is it really about a tree? No, it's about people. It's about a man. It's about being righteous. Is you're going to be a tree. So a lot of times we're using things that we know about at the time when it's written or spoken to explain a concept. Who was really good at that? Oh, wait, Jesus, Yeshua, the parables. He used agriculture. He used fishing. He used things that people would know, the things that they would relate to. Okay? So I want you to think about that as you think about when you go back. I want you to read that whole dream, read that whole vision, and ask the Holy One. Don't take my word for it. I am asking you to be me for a minute and what my perception of this is now, today, as opposed to what it used to be. Is he's saying he knew that Peter was going to have to go see Cornelius, and he knew that he was not going to do it because as a Jew, he would not be he would be goyim. He would be, we'll talk about today, polluted. He wouldn't be able to touch him because he didn't want to be not fit for service. He didn't want to be till evening. So he would have not wanted to associate with him, and definitely would not wanted to go into his residence. Okay. And so he was given a dream. What kind of dream would Peter understand? Something about things being caught up in nets and what mixing together. Oh, that would be like fish. Oh, wait, he was a fisherman. So he's given a dream, and he would never have seen those things as food. It wasn't talking about the food making things clean. It was talking about people, the goyim, the Gentiles mixing with the Jews. That Yeshua, that God had made all. Yeshua made all. They made all things clean, meaning people, not food. So some things are not fit for human consumption because they are polluted. They're filters. And that's all I want to say. If you think about the things are like, well, nowadays it was because of refrigeration. It was because I'm okay with all that. We can still be friends. I'm okay with what, because I really believe this has to be a personal conviction. But what I want to ask you to do is I won't impose that on you, but I'm going to ask you to honor me as well, right? Because I am not trying to take on something that he tried to deliver me from. That's not what I'm doing, because I feel more free today than I've ever felt. It's no different than me telling you, yeah, you don't have to obey the laws to go down to the stop sign. You don't have to stop at those anymore because they're gone away with. You know, there's things I want you to just take a minute and just ask him to reveal it to you, not just because someone else told you, not some other teacher, including myself, minister told you something. He told us that he will guide us in all truth. So ask him for guidance. What is he saying to you when you ask him about it? Not, oh, this is what I've taught. This is what I've always known. I'm including myself. I'm very careful about that. And as we're going into this, I'm going to challenge you maybe into some areas. And we didn't get to hit chapter 11 because it really is an all day event. I feel like it's going through about things about eating. And I love talking about how things contaminate other things. And as we talked before, what's the difference between tameh and what's tahor? What is fit for its service? What is ritually fit? What can operate, walk right into the temple, in the tabernacle, and do the work? What can do that? What can come into his presence? What are the things that are ritually fit? And take a minute and look at Matthew 5:8. It said, blessed are the pure of heart, the ritually fit. If we look into that deeper, like go in and do it, for they will see God. How do you have a ritually fit heart? How do you have a ritually fit heart? Well, Jesus, Yeshua, he told us in Matthew 15:9-20, he said, out of the heart come evil thoughts, murderers, adulterers, fornication, thefts, false witness, slanderers. These are the things that defile a man, make them not fit for service, that are make them ritually fit, that make them tameh. We will read it as unclean, but it's polluted. There's things, and we go back to 11. What he's saying is these animals, I'm going to use the sacred pig for a minute. This is He's saying this is a polluted animal. So when you eat it, it causes you then to be polluted. It causes you to not be fit for ritual. So you're eating I always tease and say it's like the things that are the filters of the earth. It's like having your pool filter and putting it on a plate and putting like barbecue sauce and being like, hey, yo, come on over for dinner. You'd be like, why are you giving me a pool filter? Like, that's not even food. That's how I feel about it now. It's like, that's not even food. Like, why would I even eat that? It's a filter. I don't want it in me because I have service I need to do and I want to be at my game. I want to be fit for service. It doesn't mean I'm going to hell. Doesn't mean I'm lost my salvation. Doesn't mean any of those things. It means no different than if I eat a certain amount of gluten or sugar, I'm going to be tired for a few days. I know how that affects my body. Some of these things I don't understand it. I'm just doing it because he said so. But he said these are the things that defile a man. So what is operating? We want to tameh and tahor is something that's operating in its intended function, and the other would be tameh would be. Wait, let me get right. Tahor operating in its intended function. Tameh, it's not operating in its function that it was intended to. And I will reinforce that because I kind of think it's important that we really get out of that clean, unclean thinking and think, is it fit for ritual service or not fit for ritual service? Or if it's polluted so it can't operate in the other things it's supposed to do, or does it have the ability, maybe something that might have the ability to pollute so that something else can't operate in its intended function? Certain foods have the ability to pollute so that you can't operate it. We're going to talk about mold and mildew. We're going to talk about tazarat. We're going to talk about how those things, or sexual emissions. Again, if you have littles around, I'm going to be very mindful of my terminologies and my language, but I do want to warn you this might be a good time to put headphones on. Again, I just want to say this as we go through these. I just want to do what Yeshua did. If he did it, I want to do it. If he ate it, I want to eat it. If he didn't eat it, I don't want to eat it. If he celebrated it, I want to celebrate it. It's like he said, whatever I see my father doing, that's what I want to do. And he walked that out, and he continued to say, I want you to be set apart. Kadosh. How are you set apart? How do people see you as different? And again, it is a process of becoming kadosh. It's a process of becoming holy. It's a process of becoming set apart. It isn't instantaneously. It's what we used to say: saved, I'm sanctified, and I'm filled with the Holy Ghost. Like there's that process. We'll call it sanctification. That process of becoming set apart. Please have grace for one another as we go through that process. Have grace for me. Have grace for one another. And I please feel the grace coming from here with you as well. So we're going to start this whole section out, y'all, with women in childbearing. And I'm going to say there's a lot of things on here I would love to see reinstated. If some of you know about the concept of the red tent, it was, I wish we had a red tent for women. It was the place where women could go during the time of their menstrual cycle. It could, while they were not fit for service. They were not able to operate in their full intended purpose. Or after having a baby, they would go, and then other women would take over and help care for the things that needed to be done. Really? I want that. Right? Who else? I need to hear some girls out here shouting saying, yes, I would love to have that. It wasn't a punishment. It wasn't a punishment that, oh, well, the woman had to be set aside and she didn't have to, she was, no, it wasn't a punishment. It was a gift. It was a gift for her to be redeemed and to be restored and have the time away. And we're going to talk about babies. If it was a male child, she got 40 days. If it was a female child, she got 80. We could spend a lot of time on that and take some time understanding the way hormones work and baby girls and this whole process, and what a beautiful time of a woman being able to be restored. It is a tame state after the baby. It's a time when something has polluted her so that she can't operate in her intended function. What? A baby polluting her? No, 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 no. There's blood. There's something has caused that we look at the word polluted as thinking of like toxic waste poured into a canal or something. I want you to think about something that has disturbed uh, her to the ability that she can operate in her intended function. Something has disrupted things, right? So we have a disruption of this blood flow, and it can't operate in the intended function. Um, Same as during her nida, which is menstruation, during that nida period. Think about during that nida period, we think of it's kind of like a death. It's sort of like a death has occurred because the egg did not get fertilized. The uterus is not operating in its intended purpose now. It's now going to have to break down. So it's breaking down to clean itself, to rebuild itself. These words are going to be important as we keep going on this. This is a process. The nida, I think, is such a beautiful picture of as we go forward, talking about living outside the camp, talking about walking in that tameh state. It's not that they're saying, oh, you're polluted. You're not fit for temple service. You're not fit for the, well, there's another way to look at it. And we look at the word is to becoming bright, becoming clean. It's the state of becoming fit for service. It's that state of becoming. So think about that uterus. And that uterus it's the walls are tearing down. All of that has to be cleaned and cleaned out. The baby, the egg, one half of the seed, right? There's seed the one half of that baby did not get fertilized, so it's dying. All of that it's all about dead things, and the lining is dead. All of that being gone. It's that season of becoming clean. That not I don't even want the word clean. That season of becoming renewed, becoming bright and restored. It's interesting too that she was available. I was looking at, when is it available? We talk about intercourse during this time. There was intercourse is not allowed during this time of nida. Okay, and if we think, I was thinking about that. Well, they weren't allowed to have intercourse for like the week of and then the week after. God help you if you're Orthodox, because then it's like, well, the week before just in case, and there's all the fences and whew. But it's interesting when you look at the times of the month that intercourse was encouraged was actually during the fertile times of a woman when the uterus had rebuilt itself and it was now able now to reproduce. It was now operating in its intended purpose. It wasn't going through death because we're not to touch dead things. It had restored. There had been redemption. And I love the beauty of that. Women, our bodies are we see the moon. It mimics the moon. It's renewed. It's renewed. Our uterus every month around the moon, it's renewed. It's renewed. And I was thinking about the anticipation that would be built up, the desire that would be built up during this time, because there would be 2 weeks that they weren't able to touch each other. And then there would be this time for healing, but there would just be this anticipation, this desire that would build up to that time instead of it just being anytime they wanted. It's exciting for that. Nida means, if you look at that word nida, it actually means someone who is separated. So that's kind of goes along when we talk later about being outside the camp. Okay. In 12:4 it says she will continue in the blood of her purifying 3 and 30 days. In her purifying. That word is tahora. The root is tahor. In her purifying. She will remain in her tahora. She gets through that nida stage, but then she has an extra days after having a baby of the tahora. And again, tahor means to become bright and pure. Does tahor mean unclean? No, it's to become bright. It's about bringing purity. It says bringing purity to the air, a splendor, a brightness, a majesty. I like that so much better than, oh, this is unclean. It's a state of becoming, so it's not ready yet. It's a state of rejuvenating, renewing. This is a thing when it's becoming, it can't work in its function yet because it's just not ready. Now, some things can pollute a person so they can't. We talked about food and there's other things, touching dead things. Okay, so she has 7 days. Then she makes a mikvah to cleanse. And we understand how a mikvah works. That's a really great study for you to go into and check that out. What does a mikvah look like? In the Rooted Cafe, we have a really great teaching on nida. We also have a really great study. I believe, Misty, you did that one on the mikvah. Like, what does it look? And I think also Robin Cowherd also did one on the mikvah. What does that look like? Why was it important? Interesting how we've brought in the Christianity, we've brought in like what baptism looks like, but it's different. A mikvah is not, it is, but it isn't, but it's, I think it's better. It's, you can mikvah anytime, and mikvah required fresh water flowing in, which we're going to talk about living water. It needed to be, you know, chaim mayim, living water had to come in. So 7 days, and then she would go to a mikvah, she would cleanse, and then she took on this new status. She wasn't in that nida separation anymore, so she could touch things. She could, but she still was to be set apart and not resume her duty. She was still set apart. And interesting, it says then there was a sin offering. There would be a sin offering she would bring. So I kind of sat in that. Well, what would be her sin? I mean, who knows, right? Because it was personal. But that chatat, like, why is she taking an offering? Why is she bringing an approach to the Holy One for missing the mark, chatat? Well, maybe sages say there could have been harsh thoughts or harsh words during childbirth. I had to do a rotation as a nurse, as a delivery nurse, so I've delivered some babies, and it was fun to see. It was fun to watch different women how they process through childbirth, especially cultures. Different cultures process childbirth completely differently. And I've heard some really fun things from women as they're giving birth and screaming at their spouses or screaming to God, I'm never taking vows. I'm never doing this again. So this could have been a time when those vows had to be released. There had to be, it was unintentional sin, things that maybe have done or said unintentionally during this process. I don't know. Just wanted, that's a little humor to it, but actually sages do incorporate that, saying there could be things said against the Holy One or to their spouses that they would need to be bringing something to, coming out of their mouth. And then there's also the elevation is offered also first. And the goal, bottom line, is that this is, it's elevated up to him. The goal is that we want to bring the closeness back. The goal is I once was lost, but now I'm found. I once was set apart. He gave me, I didn't have to go to the temple. Can we look at it that way? During the time of my nida, during the time of having a baby, I didn't have to show up to the temple or the tabernacle. I didn't have to do those things. He loves us so much, ladies, that he said, I'm going to give you time off. So those expectations are off you, because I know people are going to be, why isn't she still doing that? I remember having a baby and my mother-in-law saying, I had some issues afterwards that took me a little bit longer to heal. And I remember her after I had my baby, I had a big giant potluck, and I finally remembered, wait a minute, they kept you in the hospital back then for a week. I was out in 23 hours. They remember back in the day that you stayed in the hospital for a week, and you're like with your little cute thing, hair's all cute, and they bring you the baby, and then they take the baby away, and you could rest, and they would take care of things. They don't do that anymore, because that was kind of the concept going along with this. We can see they were helping. There was a healing process that has to take place. And then what happens is those approaches, then those corbanots, those offerings, are now the ability for her to now come back in and make the approach and restore the closeness with her creator, because all of her energy, her thoughts, everything has been wrapped around this sweet little baby and all around what's going on, and the transition that's happening with another baby if it's more than one. All of that, he was giving her the freedom to say, I'm going to give you a timeout so you can take care of those things, so your mind and your heart is not divided. He loves us that much. And then I'm going to let's restore that closeness, and I'm going to give you an approach. I'm going to give you a way to come back into my presence, to come back close to her creator. It's all about, the other thing is to remember during all this time, intimate relations are forbidden. I want to talk about during that week of Nida every month, or during that week, or while she has the issue of blood. Intimate relations are forbidden. Jew Now, for those of you who are on the camp that, oh, there's a different laws for Jews and Gentiles, I'm okay. I hear you. I will challenge you and say, when the mixed multitude came out, and once you accept Yeshua, you are grafted in. You are Israel. So I will challenge you in that. Acts 15, though, one of the lists is sexual immorality, and they considered that sexual immorality is having sex during the Nida. So I put that out to all of you. Be mindful of that. They actually considered it the equivalent of incest. Yeesh, I'm not going there, but I'm just going to say that's what the sages, where I've read. But just the word says don't do it. Just don't do it. And then you transition into this zava is a thing. I think we talk about this later in chapter in maybe 15. But I will talk about zava. If it goes longer than 7 days, then we think about the woman with the zava, or the issue of blood that Yeshua healed. So as you're reading these, I want you to think about those kind of stories. The leper, the women of the issue of blood. We're going to talk about that stuff when he's talking about your heart, about what's coming out of your heart. Okay, so not only was this woman with zava, this issue of blood, she wasn't ritually fit. She wasn't able to get close to her creator at the tabernacle or go to the temple and make the approaches. She was cut off from all of that. She was cut off from all of that. That would have been so important in her life. But not only that, but she was dealing with this issue, which many of you know, just dealing with that constant life issue of all those years. I know women who've had that issue. I highly recommend. It's called Dong Quai. It's spelled a gajillion ways because it's phonetic. So say like TANGKUI, DONGQUI. However, go into any health food store, ask for that. I'm not a doctor. This is not a prescription, but I'm going to tell you, hundreds of women that I know who've had issues with endometriosis or any of those things, they take this, they take this herb, and it has brought magical healing to their body. The first month you take it 3 times more than it says on the bottle. Second month 2 times, and then once, and then how it says on the bottle the third month and on. So like if it says 1 pill a day, the first month you take 3. If it says 1 pill a day, the second month you take 2, and then 1 pill a day after that. Some ladies take the tea. They'll get the Dong Quai and they'll do the tea. So I'm just telling you, magical. If you have endometriosis, I have women who were supposed to get hysterectomies. I've told them to do this. Again, this is not a prescription. Please seek counsel of your doctor. Whatever we have to say out here to tell you, I'm not a doctor. I'm not prescribing. Please seek medical advice, because I don't know if you're taking something else that could counteract with it. So please ask your doctor before you do it. But I do know women. I have the testimonies of women who've done this who couldn't have babies because they're constantly bleeding. They had endometriosis so bad it was painful. They had POS. They were going in for hysterectomy. I said, give me a month. Give me a month. And they have done it for a month. They were never going to be able to have children because it was so bad. They were gaining weight nonstop. They've taken it like I told them to. It was important to do it 3 times, then 2 times, then 1 time. They have children. They didn't have the hysterectomy. They're living life. That was used to heal their bodies. What a blessing. Praise Yah for that. Hallelujah, right? It was so amazing. So if you're having an issue, I just want to sneak that in. You can email me, charlie@charliebrown.com. I don't have an E. It's just Charlie with an I. You can email me and I can write that out for you if you want. But it's amazing. Misty says that stuff is the best. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, so she's dealing with this. But if you haven't had these issues before, you'll be like, whoa, woman issue of blood, moving on. But can we just sit in it? This woman, not only she's not able to go to be part of what everyone else is doing at the tabernacle, she's not able to be in community. People aren't touching her. No one's being intimate with her. If you've gone a while without having a hug or someone intimately touching you, it's hard. No one's touching her. And then as a woman, she's not operating in the state that she was built. She's not able to have babies. She's not operating in that intended purpose for her. There's a lot of things that could be coming to play here. So this was a big deal that Yeshua, Jesus, walked up to her and he touched her. And when she reached out and held on to his tzitzit, and then the healing came forth to her. She reached out to the living water. She was not allowed to take a bath in any of the mikvahs because she hadn't stopped bleeding, so she could never go and be purified. But she reached out to the hem of the living water, and it flowed through her and cleaned her from the inside out. She was cleaned and she was healed. Isn't that beautiful? And then people could touch her again. She was restored to redeemed to that time she could be with in community. She could be face to face with her creator because she wasn't in that state that was separating her. Isn't that beautiful? His love was never separated from us. And that we have Yeshua because he is that connector, so nothing separates us from his love. But I just sometimes feel like we blow over these stories and they're huge and we blow over them like they're, oh yeah, we've heard them our whole life and we're desensitized. And I want you just to sit in that for a minute. What would it be like if you were one of the people we're reading about this week where you're disassociated from community and touch and operating in your intended purpose? I've made some decisions in my life, which we might talk about how that works in here, but they have cut me off from people, my intended purpose. All right. Oh, guys, the word tazara, leprosy. We're going to jump right into the scabbiness of things, and metzora. Tazara would be the issue. Metzora is the person with the issue. So Tazara is translated as leprosy. It is strongly argued that the symptoms that we're talking about here are not the same as what we would think is leprosy, like their skin is falling. When I was a kid, we'd go, leprosy, all my skin is falling off of me. I'm not half the man I used to be. Sorry, bad joke. So they're saying it's not the same. The symptoms are not the same, or that it wasn't about preventing a contagion. I would say personally today, I say yes, yes, and yes. Both no. I don't know. Is it true or not? Yes. I don't know. But what I can say is it doesn't make sense to me even today as I went through it part by part. Like if this were my instruction manual and I were a priest and I were having, because they were the only ones, the Kohen were the only ones allowed to diagnose this. So how am I going to, this is my manual on how I'm going to diagnose this. Went back to pretending like I'm in nursing school and I would make these little cheat cards. So if I were making cheat cards and if you were going to come to me and show me some white thing on your arm, some weird spot you had growing, which just because I told you I was a nurse, please. I mean, I have a white spot on my arm right here from a burn I got a long time ago. It's a scar. I have people all the time. I have this weird bump on my arm. What do you think that is when they find out I'm a nurse? So like, please don't show me weird bumps. Yeah. Yeah. That's weird. I thought I just, ugh. Okay. Sorry. So if I were in nursing school, I'm in preschool and I have priest school. And these are the instructions for me because I would be having little flashcards like okay, if this happens and this happens, and then if it's on the whole body, then this, and if the hair's white, then this, and if the hair yellow, and then but if there's two black hairs, it's okay. I would be having flashcards like, okay, wait, hold on a second, let me cheat. Okay, let me see. I mean, did they have tests? Did they like have like in nursing school we have like fake arms, and then you have things and you like can tell. Obviously, they probably didn't have that. They just had to see it and know. Okay, but there were some things that don't make sense to me, like when it says, "Oh, if the whole body turns white, well, then now it's not contagious anymore. Now you're not." That doesn't make any sense to me. If it's contagion, confinement, if it's covered my whole body, I don't even. So as I went through step by step, it didn't make sense to me that those things would prevent a contagion. Another example is when we talk about the house in a little bit, if we get to it, is truly if it was a contagion issue, then you wouldn't be able to bring your things out of the house. You would have to leave the things in the house. You wouldn't be cleaning your stuff, taking your stuff out of the house because if it was contagious, it's all contagious, right? Does that make sense? So I struggle with if this is an issue of contagion or not, and I'll leave it there. I guess he'll let us all know when we need to know. But it didn't make sense to me as a nurse, as a scientist. Those things, part of who I am, it didn't add up. If this is truly about that, but what I'm going to talk to you, because this is the practical portion. We're not going to talk about the science behind how mold and mildew works and how leprosy works or anything. I'm going to talk to you about, you know, um, yeah, I wrote notes to myself. If it truly was an issue in the house, they would have burnt the house to the ground. It wouldn't just be about like confinement and things like that. There would be some issues. There would be sometimes you can walk around, but sometimes you can't. Then you can come home, but then you can't come home. There wouldn't be that issue if it was truly contagion. So, um, but one thing that we're going to focus on today is that I do agree with the sages on this, and they're emphatic about this, that this is a physical representation of a spiritual matter. And I'm going to say that rings true to me because the more I was into it this week, the more that I spent even time today in it, the Holy One was showing things in my life where I've brought Tazria in my life. I was the Metzora because of my choices. And it is thought that the primary cause of this is the sin of slander. And the reason for that is we have the example of Miriam, right? We have Miriam where she gets this because of slandering Moshe. And another reason is that the antisocial behavior of slander, talking against a person, is their penance is actually being cut off from society. So it's actually I'm speaking against you, so the way that I am punished is being separated from society because I'm anti-society. And the way that it was healed is actually through repentance. And again, only the Kohen could diagnose the Saras. Only that Tazaria. That's none of it. But they're looking at the skin. If you look through each thing, they're looking. Is this going deeper than the flesh? What does this look like? Is it on the surface or is it going deeper? And the Holy One was really stirring me. Like, what in my life is am I have I been either I've brought in, have I been exposed to, have I exposed myself to by choices, television, whatever, people, whatever, that is it affecting my nephesh, my flesh, and it's just like, oh, it's just it's my old Monty Python. I mean, it's just a flesh wound. Is it just off of my flesh? Is it easy to wipe off and it's done? Or has it gone in and now it's affecting my neshama? Is it going all the way in? It's going deeper than my flesh. It's affecting deeper parts of me. And then if that's happening, what happens? It starts affecting others because it's coming out of my mouth, right? Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Out of the abundance of what's in here, what's gone deeper than my flesh is going to eventually start coming out of my mouth. It's not going to, and we're going to talk about what we think we're saying or thinking that's in private. It doesn't really matter when we talk about the home and the infection of a home. Interesting that the specifications to me when we're talking about the home, or even some of the the home, they mark the house with like the issues, like on a head it said you leave certain hair, you don't shave up to the hair. The reason is because that was the way of drawing a line around the wound to see if that infection was spreading or if it was getting worse. I feel like I have to spend some more time in that to see how is that on a spiritually translate. I know as a nurse, if you come in and you've got a wound and I see it and I notice that there's a little redness all around it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a magic marker. It's got to be a permanent ink, and I'm going to mark all around that wound. So that way I can tell whether in an hour or when you come back, or if you're in the hospital and it's over, whatever, while you're in my care, I'm going to be able to know what's the baseline. Is it growing? Is it getting worse? Because I've put a line around it. And it's interesting that we're going to see this going. These Kohen are acting like medical people. So sometimes we have things that erupt in us that we need to spend time outside the camp. And that's where we get to in this, right? Sometimes there's a redemption process. And that's what I want you to see here today. It's a way of redemption. We see Yeshua now as the way of our redemption. And I want to speed up because I really want to get to this part. But it is such a redemption. So sometimes things are going to erupt. Sometimes they're going to come out of us. Sometimes we need to spend time outside the camp because we of things we're saying, things that we've been exposed to, our attitudes, things are causing us to be uh man, I've needed time outside the camp a few times this week. And I should have stayed longer than a week because it says stay a week and then you come back and you're evaluated, then you go back. The other thing I want you to remember is that when I'm walking through and I know that I am tame. I know that I've got some stuff that it's gotten off my flesh and it's gotten deeper. It's bothering me. It's manifesting in different ways in my life. You're seeing the symptoms, signs and symptoms of what's going on inside deeper now. It's not just here. Other people weren't going, oh, unclean, 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 like with a woman with the issue, right, of blood. It wasn't that everybody was screaming. She was the one who was supposed to announce it. The person with the issue is the one who's supposed to be announcing it where they go. That needing to be separated. Sorry guys, I need to be separated. And I'm thinking we can't even today keep our kids home if they have a runny nose. We're just like, oh, we're fine. We're just all spreading everything, right? We do the same thing with our mouth. I'm guilty. We do the same thing with our attitudes. I'm guilty. We do the same things with things we bring into our homes. We expose ourselves to. I'm guilty. And what happens is that we become a contagion. We really do, because it's like one bad apple spoils the whole bunch, right? Okay, let's get back to the white spots. The root of these is Sarah. It's interesting because it's to strike down or to scourge. And I'm just going to give you some little homework. I want you to look up it's Sadeh, Resh, and Ayin. It's that righteous person, the leader, the teacher, this generation, the Sadeh. When we talk about a Zadik is a righteous man. So the Zadeh is the righteous person. Then you have the Resh, which is this humbled air coming down. And then we see the Ayin, the eye, the vision. And I want you to look the contronyms of those up. What happens when those things are contronymed? What is the opposite of these? Because I think that's what we're seeing and it's operating here. When you have a white spot, when you have instead of being righteous, you're not righteous, right? When you're not humbled, but there's pride and your vision it's changed your vision. Okay. That's happened. Okay. The affected person is supposed to dress and conduct themselves differently so that they look set apart. They're supposed to be wearing like raggedy clothes. They're supposed to look different, plus be set apart. It's interesting because that is the contronym of when they are being Kodesh, because they're dressed a certain way. We're supposed to be set apart so people want to be like us. But when we aren't being Kodesh, when we aren't acting the way that we were intended, we are supposed to say, I'm not fit for human consumption. This isn't a good time to be around me, and I should look different and act different. Okay. I'm going to squeeze through. Oh, it makes sense then that we have to make a sin offering right away after this, and then a fellowship offering, and then a mincha offering. I'm going to unpack this really quick. Go back and listen to the teachings on Leviticus 1 and 2. There has to be this chatat offering. I've missed the mark. I've missed the mark, Father, and I want to be able to come into your presence. And I've got this contamination in I've been polluted. I've polluted myself. I've allowed this pollution to come in that's brought a separation from me being able to come into your presence. So now I've spent time outside the camp. I'm repenting. So I'm bringing the chatat offering as a repentance. And then I want to bring a fellowship offering because of what that things that have come out of my mouth is probably done as far as my fellowship with my community, that I'm bringing a fellowship offering. And then the mincha offering is that grain offering. That would have been my provision, that I'm trusting, Father, that I've had to take some time away. So I know that you're going to bring provision during that time, right? Okay, Metzora, chapter 14. We're going right into chapter 14. Being outside the camp needs to be looked at not as an angle of punishment. I want you to see it as an angle of, I have to go outside the camp because I need some time for redemption. I need some time for healing. I've got some stuff coming out of me. Maybe you're going through a process of counseling with someone. They're bringing up traumas. There's things are coming up, and it's going to come up, and it's not going to look so pretty. I had an infection up in a tooth that had broken. And you know what ended up happening? I had this big bump come out on the outside of my face because the infection that was on the inside actually manifested on the outside. Okay. And so that's I needed a time of healing. I needed antibiotics. I needed a time to be set apart and healed for a little while. I couldn't do certain things because it was painful. And he loved everyone so much. He's saying, how about we set you outside? Because this could be painful. And so that you have a special time for us to be redeemed and to restored to one another. This is the time I'm going to spend with you. It's not punishment. You're not on a timeout. You might feel that way if your heart isn't in the right place. And then there's two stages of bringing that purity back to that metzora, that person who with a condition, the skin condition. Uh, first time they come back, they first he can come back and he's still tameh. He's still polluted, we'll say. And the sages say that because it was about slander is the reason why they had to, when they first came in, and they were saying, okay, well, you can come back in. You're still tameh, but you can come back in because you're in the process of healing, right? You're still going to need a little more time. And the first round, there's two stages to this. You're going to bring in birds. You're going to bring in some. There's got to be like crimson thread, some hyssop, and cedar wood. We need you to bring all this stuff in. Sages say that because this is why they think it's about slander, is because the birds are chirpy. The chirping birds, it symbolizes they're chirping and they're fluttering all around, spreading it to everybody. I don't know if that's true, but makes sense. But continue on in verse 4 of 14. It said the cedar wood. It brings cedar wood. And if we think of cedar wood, we think about haughtiness. It grows tall, it grows strong, it's imposing. So it's haughtiness. This cedar wood is brought in. The crimson thread and the hyssop. This wool is dyed from this lowly creature, this snail that we don't even really know the where it's from, but this snail symbolizing this newfound humility, and then the hyssop, lowly bush representing humility, and it's bringing healing. Okay, so you have the cedar and the hyssop, then they're bundled together with a thread, and then this blood is put into this Chaim Mayim, this living water, which goes into this vessel. What a beautiful symbolism. And then one is set free, being reborn. It's I want you to think about Yeshua's side was pierced, and it said, and blood and water flowed, and it brought redemption. It was a symbolism of being reborn again. It was, I have the opportunity to come in, be restored, be redeemed. And I know that because of Yeshua, because of Jesus and what he did for me, I know that symbolism is on me, and that he became humble, and it was sprinkled on me. I know, and I received that. I received that as we just got through Passover, as we put it over our doorpost. We're being born again. Okay, I just love that part. It's so beautiful. But what if your house is? I hope we get this done. What if your house is sick? What if we what if what we're saying inside our house, it doesn't leave my house? Who's going to know it? I'm just writing it, or I'm just telling my friend, or I'm just speaking to my spouse or my child. It's just happening under our roof. What happens under our roof, it's private, it stays here. What happens? What happens when that happens? What if that's the mildew in the mold? It's a little spot, but no one's going to see it. Well, it's interesting because I was praying like, God, why would you put a mark on that house? And it's like it was happening in private, and he's going to be like, no, what happens I'm going to bring light. Because remember, when we say that word, that means tameh is to becoming bright, and the lightness is to be becoming out, meaning it's a process. It's something is exposed. So whatever is in darkness is going to be brought to light. People are going to see it. It's going to come out of your mouth. I promise you, you think it's all private or whatever till you get on the road and someone cuts you off. It's not so private. The abundance of your heart, this is going to speak, right? What about our bodies? What's inside of us? Oh, but it's a victimless crime. I'm just talking in private, maybe on my phone, maybe a text. You look around when you say it, like is someone going to hear it, or a friend? It's safe. This is a really safe place to say crazy things. No, it isn't. Remember, we're told whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, Selah, think on these things. So it matters what you think about. This is because Because if not, we're constantly thinking about things that are not a good report, things that are constantly, and it's really difficult when you're letting things like if you're watching to the news all the time, you are going to be tempted to then constantly thinking of bad reports, constantly thinking of things that are slanderous, constantly start getting, it's going to build up inside of you. And all of a sudden you're going to realize what's coming out of your mouth because of what you've allowed in this house, this vessel, this house that you thought it's all happening in private. It's not, because all of a sudden there's going to be a mark on you. Something's going to be manifested in you that you realize, oh, and he's going to allow it because he says he even places the mark. I don't want that mark on me. I want his mark of me, that I'm righteous, that I'm set apart. But a mark's going to be put on me. And what happens is now I realize, oh, wow, I've been thinking about some crazy stuff. The things in my thoughts, the things that are in private, they can cause Tamei in our lives. We are the Kohanim of our home. So what does it say? We need to circle it. We need to see if it gets worse. We may need to take and dig in and scrape the plaster off. Cut things out of our lives, cut things out of our home, cut things out of our things we associate with. If it gets worse and we realize, if you take a time out and you're taking, okay, I close things up and I'm going to take 7 days away from this. We can take it off the home, right? But what about in our minds? What about our bodies? I'm going to take 7 days away from it. And if I realize when I come back in, it's gotten worse. What if I come back into that situation? If I've taken 7 days away, I don't know if you've been away from your home and you have pets and you've been away from your home, maybe in a day, but usually it takes a couple days. You get away and you come home and you didn't smell dog smell before, but now you've desensitized to that smell. And you're like, oh God, I've lived in a home before that had mildew in it. And I remember when I first walked into the home going, oh man, this is overwhelming mildew, then scrubbed and cleaned the whole house everywhere. And then we would leave maybe for a few days and come back and I would smell it again. It would be back. It wasn't gone because it was underneath the house. There was mildew, there was mold, and mold causes sickness. There's so many levels of application to this. We know the practical implications of mold and mildew in your home on your health. I mean, how many of you ever have been diagnosed with mildew sickness? Mildew poisoning, mold poisoning, I should say, the mold poisoning that, especially, oh my gosh, black mold, horrible things. Are you in a home and you don't understand why you constantly have a headache? That's happened when I've worked at places before, constantly having a headache because it was an old building and it was mold and mildew coming through the system. That happens in our lives too. That's practical. Let's talk about our homes and this. I'm the tabernacle. I'm the home. I'm his home. Is he going to be in a place? And if I maybe have disassociated from, maybe could be the news. I don't know. I don't want to beat up on anybody about the news, but it could be a person that's super negative. It could be, and you spend time away from it and then you come back and you're like, oh, like that's horrible. I didn't realize how bad that was. I was desensitized to it, or the language of a show you watch, or the sexual content of it. That's happened to me. I've watched something and kind of got desensitized to it and then spent a time away from it and went, oh, I forgot I love that. And I turned the show back and I was like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And I don't watch it. Sometimes you're going to have to scrape it out. You're going to have to replaster, replace it. Again, it might be people in your lives. We hear Yeshua say, if your eye offends you, pluck it out. If your hand offends you, cut it off. What around you is the mildew or the mold, the mark that's around you. Is he showing you, you need to cut it out and replace it? If you watch the home improvement shows, you'll see if there's been dry rot in a home, for example, you'll notice they have to cut all that out. If there's been mold, if you like, especially after hurricanes, we see how they're cutting out all the plaster. They have to treat it and then they have to rebuild it. Why? Because it's the foundation of the home. How has that foundation been violated? Right here. Right here. Is it just something you can wash off? It's not a big deal. Could you just wash it and it goes away? Or is it something that's gone past? I do believe that we've given multiple examples this week of if it's gone past the surface level, whether it's your skin or a wall in your home. I think it's still all can be applied to us, right? If it's gone past the surface and it's gotten deeper, we need to be mindful of there's time we have to take outside. You need to call it like, hey, I need some time outside the camp. I have been polluted. I am tameh, and I am going to become tahor. I'm in the process of becoming bright and set apart. I need to cut the things out that are polluting me so that I can walk in that. And we're back again to this: the birds, the cedar, the hyssop, the clay pot, the living water for this house issue again. Again, Yeshua was the Torah made flesh. He came in this earthen vessel. He was the living water. I think many of us need to get born again in our homes, in our minds, in our mouths. I wish we could end there. We have a couple more things to add, but literally, really, it's so powerful. But I do want to say that we have a final thing in here. It's talking about venereal emissions, Zav. It says anything he touches, it's ritually unfit. And what this reminded me of in all of these things was anything that's polluting us, it's tameh. Any of those things are keeping us from being bright. So we want to become bright, right? Keeping us from being the light on the hill, keeping us from being being kodesh, set apart, looking different. But more important, all of those things really are they're a distraction. The sexual impurity is a distraction. Even having a baby is a distraction. We talked about you're distracted because you have a new thing that you're having to take care of, and it's a distraction from your ultimate goal in our life is to walk in the garden with him. So when any of these happen, they're a distraction, and he's given us a way to get back into that walk and that closeness with our Creator. A way for us to jump into closeness with him, whether it's because there's a sexual emission, there is some venereal issue going on, you have a sickness, you have an issue of blood. All those things are distractions. All of those things are going to cause you to not be able to be 100%. You're not going to be paneh a paneh, face to face with your Creator, because you're like, oh, I have this thing going on, or I hear a baby crying, or there's going to be things. And our Father, our Creator, is so amazing that he provided a way for redemption. He provided a way for us to have the time we need to be healed, have the time we need to be restored, revived, and to get back into a place where there's nothing between us. Nothing separates us from his love, but we can be separated from him because of choices we've made, things that have distracted us, things we've just let come into our lives. And he says, I love you so much. I'm going to give you guys a process so that you can spend some time outside the camp, confess your sins one to another, Kohanim, go to the Kohanim, get to a friend and say, hey, I've noticed some things happening in my life. Can I talk about this to you? I'm going to confess this to you and tell me, what do you think? Do you think this is skin level, or do you think this has gone deeper? That's how we bear one another's burdens. That's how we fulfill the Torah, the law of Christ, the Torah. Is we say, you know what, tell me more about it. Tell me more. Is this deeper? Is this gone to this place, or is this surface level? Let's keep an eye on it. How about you take some time away, pray for 7 days, and come back to it, and let's talk about it. It does apply today. It seems like this can't apply today. It does apply today. Isn't that crazy? It applies today. I hope you know how blessed you are. I hope you know how loved you are, because you are loved, and his word is practical and it applies to you. And I can't wait to see you next week. Have a great week. Have a great week. Shavua Tov.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע, ואכפת לו מכל דבר קטן. תדע לך, שזו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך.
are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.